If you've got a magic number in your head, the one that's supposed to tell you you're finally safe to retire, let me stop you before you get any further. Because that number that everyone fixates on, the 1 million, the 2 million, whatever that figure's been rattling around in your head, there's a good chance it's just wrong for you. And chasing it might be the very thing keeping you from the retirement you've already earned. So today I want to take apart the whole question, how much do I need to retire? And show you why it's the wrong question in the first place and what to ask instead. Hi, I'm John Amarino, president of Securus Financial. Now, Cerulli and Associates research has found that 44% of households identify securing a comfortable standard of living as their single top financial priority. Not growth, not huge returns, a comfortable standard of living. That's the target that actually matters. And yet, most of what gets written and talked about in this industry aims at a number instead of life. Most of my work is with people in their late 50s and 60s, and it's rarely just, do I have enough? It's whether they're actually using what they've got in the smartest way possible. And what I've come to see over and over is that most people are answering a question that was never the right one to ask. Let me show you what I mean. We'll start with why that number everyone chases is so misleading and what really decides whether retirement feels comfortable. Then the actual math on what comfortable costs, because it's almost never what people assume. And then I'll give you a way to land on your real number, built around your life, not a rule of thumb somebody printed in a magazine. So let's talk about the first myth, the idea that one number works for everybody. You know the advice, save $1 million, save 10 times your salary, hit 2 million and you're home free. Trouble is, those figures are basically made up. They assume every retiree spends alike, lives alike, wants the same things out of the next 30 years. But I want you to picture two people. One's in rural Tennessee, the house is paid off, simple tastes, perfectly content. The other's in my city, San Diego, one of the most expensive cities in the nation. And that retiree wants to be on a plane somewhere new 4 times a year. The problem is the same target gets slapped on both of them. It's nonsense when you actually look at it. And here's what the research keeps finding. Real retirement spending is all over the map compared to what people expected going in. Some folks spend noticeably less than they planned. Others, especially lately, find they're spending more than they can really afford. Which tells you something. The number itself was rarely the issue. The issue is the absence of a real plan. One that accounts for how your spending is actually going to move and shift as the years go on. And if retirees do blow past that budget, it's usually in those first years, helping out the kids, remodeling the house, not because the everyday retirement was somehow too expensive to begin with. Now, you might be thinking, fine, but I still need some kind of number to aim at. And you're right, you do. So let's get into the real math, because here's where it gets interesting. The old rule tells you to replace 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income. Watch how fast that crumbles. Start with the fact that your costs change the day you retire. You're not socking away for retirement anymore. There's no 10% of your income that just stopped going out the door. The commute's gone, the wardrobe, the lunch is out, all of it shrinks. Then there's the part most people never account for. You're retired now. Every day is Saturday. Spending in retirement doesn't run in a straight line. It follows what researchers call the retirement smile. You spend more in your 60s while you've still got the health and the itch to do things. It sags through your 70s and into your early 80s, and then it climbs again later on when, unfortunately, healthcare moves to center stage. A lot of calculators completely miss this. They assume your expenses creep up at steady inflation rates year after year, which isn't really how any of this works in practice. Real spending, adjusted for inflation, tends to drift down through the early and middle stretch of retirement. Everybody's different, but that's typically the pattern. Let me put numbers on it, because this is exactly where people set their targets way too high. Say you figure you need 100 grand a year. Lean on the old 4% guideline, and that says you need around $2.5 million in the bank. Sounds like a mountain, right? But what if your real need is closer to 80,000? Because you're not saving anymore, the commute's gone, the kids are finally off the payroll. Now the figure's 2 million. And then bring Social Security into it. Now your portfolio isn't on the hook for the whole 80%, just the gap left after your Social Security benefits. suddenly the saving target drops again. Same life, same lifestyle, but a dramatically smaller number purely from getting honest and specific about what you actually need. According to Cerulli Associates 2026 research, 71% of pre-retirees have not sought advice or planning help from their 401k provider or an advisor in the past year. And 59% lack confidence calculating how much they actually need to save for retirement. Most people come to us thinking they need a bigger number, when in actuality, all they need is a clearer one. So if you'd like to grab yours, there's a link below to grab some time with me. So let's talk about the harder problem, turning that savings into income. And here's the second mistake. And honestly, this one costs people more than getting the number wrong ever does. Everybody pours their attention into the accumulation number and completely overlooks the harder problem, turning the assets into income. Because $1 million doesn't mean much if you have no idea how to convert it into a paycheck that lasts without running dry or handing the IRS more than you had to. Income is the outcome. Think about it this way. People spend 30 years getting good at saving. The automatic contributions, the employer match, watching the balance tick up, genuinely good at it. And then almost nobody spends a minute learning how to draw it back down. It's like training for years to fly a plane, but never once practicing the landing. Cerulli Associates also found that fewer than 30% of investors without a financial advisor feel confident making decumulation and tax decisions on their own. That's not a gap in willpower, it's a gap in guidance. The mechanics of drawing down a portfolio intelligently are genuinely different from the mechanics of building one. And most people are working without a map. Now here's why the gap between accumulation and decumulation matters so much. While you're saving, volatility is actually on your side. A dip just means you're buying in cheaper. You're plugging automatic contributions into your 401k when the market is down, and you're buying investments at a discount. This is called dollar cost averaging. But now you're retired, and your livelihood depends on that money. And that same volatility can wreck you. A rough run of returns in the first few years of retirement can do permanent damage that you may never recover from. And that is what is known as sequence of returns risk. So two people with identical portfolios can end up worlds apart based on nothing but when they happen to retire. One steps away in 2009, catches a recover all the way up, and the money seems to last forever. Meanwhile, the other retired in 2007, takes withdrawals straight into the teeth of the market crash and runs dry somewhere in their mid-70s. Same number, same lifestyle, just different timing. So the real question was never, do I have enough? It's whether you can turn what you've got into a dependable income that holds up no matter what the market does, especially in those first few years. Then there's the behavior problem. What about inflation, healthcare? What if taxes climb? All fair, all real. But when we actually stress test plans, the things that most often quietly sinks a perfectly good plan isn't any of those. It's behavior. Panic selling when the market drops, switching on Social Security too early without running the numbers, converting to a Roth IRA at the wrong moment, being a little too generous with those kids. Every one of those feels right in the moment, and everyone can quietly cost you tens of thousands of dollars down the road. Let me walk you through how to find your real number. And I genuinely do this, not just nod along and go with it. So first I want you to start with what you actually spent, not some percentage of your old paycheck. I want you to track your bank and credit card statements for 4 months. Strip out the work stuff, add back in the things you plan to do more of, like travel, the hobbies, golf. And what you're left with is a fairly good understanding of your expense baseline. From there, add up your guaranteed income. That's your Social Security, your pension, annuities. Whatever sits between that guaranteed money and your baseline spending, that gap is what your portfolio actually has to cover. That gap is your real target, not some round number that you found in an article. Then, put that gap through the ringer. Multiply it by 25 as a rough starting point. But don't stop there. Ask the tough questions you rather not. What if the market drops 20 or 30% in 1 year? What if long-term care enters the picture? What if a spouse passes and the household loses a Social Security and a pension check? Those scenarios matter a whole lot more than hitting some tidy figure. A plan that survives all of them is a real plan. One that doesn't just told you exactly where the cracks are. And the last piece, build in room to flex. This is the quiet thing that separates the retirees who sleep soundly from the ones who lie awake. It's almost never the biggest portfolio that wins. It's the most adaptable one. Could you trim spending 10% for a year if you had to? Do you have money spread across taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free accounts so you can actually steer your own tax bracket? That kind of flexibility beats a big number every time. So let's talk bottom line. Retiring comfortably was never about hitting some figure a calculator dreamed up. It's about knowing what you really spend, turning your savings into an income stream you can count on, and building something flexible enough to take a punch when life throws one at you. I've seen people retire comfortably on $900,000, and I've seen people sitting on $3 million who still feel like the floor could give out any second. The gap between them isn't the money, it's the plan. How much is enough deserves a real answer. Your numbers, your goals, your life. So if you want to sit down and actually map out what retirement looks like for you specifically, book some time with me. The link's in the description below. See you in the next one.